How's it going, guys? I am Folkerman, your local brick build historian, with another episode of Brick Build History. Today, we're taking a look at the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka, also known as the Stuka. This one is built by Brickmania by designer Cody Osell. Unfortunately, I got this one from eBay, so I don't have the box, and actually, I don't think I even got the instructions. I just got the actual thing. So there's some things that changed. Like, I know the tail wheel changed. I know the bomb didn't come with the arms, and I honestly don't know if I put it the right way. I think the arms might be flipped if I get it in frame. But other than that, I'm pretty sure it's a majority built correctly. This is quite a hefty little kit. It's not light at all, but it's also very sturdy. A few downsides is because they use mixel joints here, the landing gear will fold up like that, even though it's supposed to be just fixed, which is what the Stuka had. It had fixed landing gear. You have a 3-bladed propeller in the front, which spins really easily, which is a very nice touch, so you can just continue to spin it. You have an air intake on the bottom, air intake on the top for the oil cooler and the radiator. You have the supercharger intake, because this is a Junkers and they use a Junkers UMO engine, and the way you can tell from a Junkers engine over a Daimler-Benz engine is the Junkers have the supercharger on the right side, while the Daimler-Benz has it on the left side. So you have the supercharger intake on the right side. You have the exhaust stacks for the inverted V12, because the Germans use all inverted V12s basically, except for the Focke-Wulf and Ju-52. So the piston cylinders are facing down, so the exhaust goes down like that. Then you also have the 500-pound bomb in the center here on a trapeze that kind of swings down as much as it can. You have the inverted gull wing, which I really like the technique using these hinge pieces down here, and then it's like the kind of like a robot arm piece thing that sticks into the hole there, and it kind of gives that angle down, and then you of course use these hinge pieces here to angle it back up. You have the machine gun ports here, the Jericho trumpet on the fixed landing gear. You have a total of 4 110-pound bombs on the outside of the wing. You have a Balkenkreuz on the top, Balkenkreuz on the bottom. You have movable flaps, outside and inside flaps on the back here. You have a very square fuselage, as the Stuka did. Brick-built canopy that is very busy. You can see, like, ooh, that's a lot of techniques that they used there. Well, that Cody used. MG15 in the back, Balkenkreuz on the side. Your 2x2 stud brick on the back of the vertical stabilizer with a yellow rudder. Horizontal stabilizer with these little protrusions on the top side. And you got a little tail wheel that is not original to the design. The person I bought it from basically took the tail wheel design from the IL-2 and stuck it on the Ju-87. Don't worry, I will make the IL-2 sometime, probably next, because I kind of want to do it. But that's the basic design of the Stuka. And I really do like it. The Stuka is one of my personal favorite aircraft of World War II for many reasons. And it just looks strong, sturdy, robust in this model as it did in real life. Hopefully sometime I'll get the other model that has the cannons attached to the underwing, or what they call the tank buster model. But that'll be for another day. But today, let's take a look into the history of the Stuka. Now, the name Stuka comes from the German word Sturzkampfflugzeug, which roughly translates to dive bomber, because the Stuka is a dive bomber. Basically, what a dive bomber is, it just goes in a dive, and then it will drop a bomb. Unlike traditional horizontal bombing, like a B-17 or the Ju-88, this aircraft uses the actual aircraft to aim the bomb, and aim it really, really accurately. It provides a lot more stability in the projective path of the bomb, because instead of having to deal with dropping it and then having the forward momentum of the aircraft move it forward as well as down, all you have to worry about is it moving straight down like this. The design was originally proposed by a man named Hermann Pohlmann. And Hermann Pohlmann kind of had this idea of the dive bomber in 1928. Unfortunately for him, in Germany, this was not really an accepted doctrine. The chief of the Luftwaffe Command Office, Walter Wever, and Secretary of State for Aviation, Erhard Milch, had a fear that the average pilot would not do a dive bombing run. They feared that most pilots would just point themselves towards the ground and kind of freak out and just kind of chicken out from going into a dive. Well, they would eventually be proved wrong, as the Germans would be really good at dive bombing, especially since their version of dive bombing is a lot more extreme than other countries. This thing would have its first flight in 1935 and introduced officially in 1937 in the Spanish Civil War. And in between that time, the concept of the dive bomber had a little help by a man named Ernst Udet. And if you are not aware of Ernst Udet was the second highest scoring German ace in World War I, scoring 62 victories. He was only 18 behind the Red Baron. And he was the highest scoring ace to actually survive the war. And after the war, he was a pretty good stuntman, doing a lot of crazy death-defying stunts and kind of just throwing caution to the wind, doing things like cutting off his engine like a couple thousand feet in the air and just diving full speed down and recovering at the last second, stuff like that. Well, someone like the highest scoring ace to survive the war in World War I is someone you would want on your side, especially if you're, say, Hermann Göring. And Hermann Göring wanted to basically buy Ernst Udet's loyalty to the Nazi Party and the Luftwaffe. Well, Ernst Udet had a love with an American aircraft, and I don't remember exactly which one it is at the top of my head, but he wanted this American aircraft, so Hermann Göring would go and buy two of them. And he sent Ernst Udet to go pick them up, and while Ernst Udet was there, he saw two F-11C Goshawks used by the Navy doing some dive bombing. And he immediately fell in love with the concept of the dive bomber and came back to Germany yelling and screaming, saying, "We need a dive bomber." Luckily for him, Hermann Pohlmann was there, and they worked together into creating this dive bomber. And this thing had a lot of technological advances, especially since it was the mid-1930s, and there were some things on here that you just imagine there's no way. Like, say, the automatic dive recovery system. Now, unlike other dive bombers, like the Dauntless, the Helldiver, or the Val, the Stuka is kind of different. Instead of going around 70 degrees down, as most other dive bombers do, the Stuka almost went straight 90. And it is crazy to see a Stuka, like a squadron of Stukas, go into a bombing run. What they would do is there's a little window below the pilot, and he will fly over and see his target. After his target is spotted, he will literally go up, flip his plane upside down, and then go into a basically straight 90 dive. From there, the bomb will go down the trapeze, which is, the trapeze was to clear the prop so that the bomb doesn't hit the propeller. But the trapeze would go down, the bomb would drop, and then an automatic system was built in to bring the aircraft level. Although this was a good idea, and it was nice to keep the aircraft from plunging straight down into the earth, it did have a adverse side effect in the fact that the Allies could also tell that the Stuka was going to eventually level out and wait for the pilot to recover and regain his consciousness. In that time, it was more than enough time to go ahead and shoot him down. So actually a lot of pilots would go ahead and disable this feature, as they seemed it was too predictable, especially with the Allied anti-air crews. The Stuka, from the Spanish Civil War all the way through World War II, was used mostly in close air support and anti-shipping roles. This thing would shoot down or bring down a lot of Allied ships, whether it's merchant ships or warships. Dive bombing is a very, very accurate way of dropping a bomb on a ship, especially since from the air a ship is not exactly a big target, so trying a horizontal bomb is next to impossible. But if you're using your plane to aim the bomb and accurately, say, put it down a smoke pipe, which is actually possible with these things, you can easily bring down a ship with merely one measly little bomb, one 500-pound bomb. You just send it down into the ammo bay, and boom, ship is bye-bye. Whenever it comes to close air support, basically they would either be used to keep the Allies' heads down using the Jericho trumpet, which is this little thing right here, which was a loud siren which would scare the bejesus out of the Allies in the beginning. Eventually it just had no effect, and they would eventually turn them off or take them off entirely. But it would be used for taking down tanks or artillery positions, fortresses, whatever it is that needs to be bombed. And there's actually a man named Oberst Hans Ulrich Rudel, who is the highest scoring Stuka ace, if you want to call him that, who took down 519 tanks, a battleship, a cruiser, 70 landing craft, and 150 artillery positions in 2,530 missions. So these things were very versatile in the beginning of the war. As soon as the Germans lost air superiority in 1943, the Stuka has really seen its dog days. Its speed was not comparable to any Allied fighter whatsoever. The single MG-15 in the back really wasn't enough to protect it from the rear, and the two 7.92 millimeter MG-17s in the front were also not enough to really bring down a plane unless it was like an I-16. It had a top speed of 238 miles per hour, which is kind of really slow. But I mean, when you look at it, you have drag from the main landing gear. You have drag from the supports on the horizontal stabilizer. You have drag from the Jericho trumpets, which actually brought it down a couple miles per hour with the Jericho trumpets on it. You have like 1,000 pounds worth of bombs on it. This thing was really slow, and actually the cruising speed was 130 miles per hour. It only had a range of 370 miles as well, which is not really all that good. Once you think about it, 370 miles, that's kind of low. It used a Junkers Umo 211DA inverted V12 engine with 1,200 horsepower. And to think that 1,200 horsepower only brings this thing to 238 miles per hour is honestly kind of sad. 6,000, around 6,000 to 6,500 Stukas would be built in all variants, whether it's the standard dive bombing variant here or the tank buster variant with the cannon pods added to it. And it would be produced until 1944, when it was realized that Stukas were really not needed anymore, and the Germans had to focus more on protecting their homeland, because the Americans were bombing the ever-living crap out of them, and the British. So whenever in 1944, like, they lost air superiority in 1943. In 1944, they shut down production of the Stuka in favor of making fighters like the Bf-109 and the Focke-Wulf 190 in order to help defeat or defend the homeland from American bombers, because that was the higher priority. And in all honesty, they were trying to find a replacement for the Stuka long before that. Even the Ju-88 had dive brakes on it to be used as a dive bomber. I think the Dornier Do-17 had dive brakes on it to be used as a dive bomber. They wanted to use a Focke-Wulf 190, I think, as a dive bomber. Like, they basically wanted every one of their bombers to be a dive bomber to try to replace this thing, because 1935 aircraft in a 1944 war was just not going to cut it anymore. In the end, the Stuka is a very beloved aircraft. It is really unique, especially having that gull wing profile on the front, which makes it very, very noticeable. The other gull wing aircraft that comes to mind is the F-4U Corsair. Of course, everyone knows that. And also the fact that the Jericho trumpet was a major psychological weapon for a couple years. And in fact, the Jericho trumpet is what is used by movies from ever since World War II all the way to today, to be used as the sound of an aircraft going down. If you say listen to the Blue, or watch the Blue Max, or some other World War I, World War II aviation movie involving planes being shot down, we hear the Jericho trumpet all the time. And in all honesty, we have become numb to the effects of the Jericho trumpet. And, you know, for something that was so feared back in the day, for us to just hear it and not think of anything about it is kind of a weird thought. Although Christopher Nolan in the movie Dunkirk was able to put the sound in a drum to really amplify the effect, which was a really nice touch. There's no flying Stukas at all left in the world. Every Stuka has been grounded. I know near me in the Everett Museum, they are trying to refurbish a Stuka, which would be really nice to see. A almost original Stuka be flying again. Hopefully I will be able to, after this pandemic, go down and see that aircraft, as well as the Focke-Wulf and ME-109 that they have there. But anyway, that is a story on the Stuka. Without a doubt, one of the greatest aircraft of World War II. Tell me what you think of the Stuka. Do you think it was really good? Do you think it was overrated? Do you think the kit was really good? Uh, did you learn anything? Throw it in the comments. If you like the video, hit a like. Subscribe if you want to see more. And, you know, tell other people who you think might be interested in this. There's a lot more to come and a lot more to do. So with that being said, I have been Full Command, and let's continue to build history.